Well, there's a train in the sky in the middle of my mind, and it's flying off a one-way track, and I try to button up my suit and tie in an attempt to hold it back. But there's this strange old conductor wearing pearls and a backwards baseball cap. Well, there's a shoe on the floor cracking open the door to the band book of my heart, and I'm just peeking through the darkness, waiting for the end to start. And there's this strange librarian smashing all the windows of her car. Sometimes the river don't flow. Sometimes the eye of the storm has a glow like a North Star, or a small town bar, or a cheap coat. Sometimes you can't see the road, or the bright yellow flame in the back of your throat. Everything hides in plain sight like the wind blows.
That is Olive Klug, who I heard last night up in Northampton. They are first of all, they are a very sharp songwriter, and I say they are non-binary. Well, actually, when you drive into Northampton, there's a big sign that says, "Welcome to Northampton." What are you, binary or something? Olive Klug is a talent, is a songwriting talent. I could have picked, they were able to play along with their sort of a second band member who played violin and guitar. And, they did, you know what it's like. You get to do like maybe 7 songs if you're lucky as an opening act. I'd say 5 of those songs are extremely sharp songwriting. So remember that name, Olive Klug. I don't know what good it will do you, actually, to remember that name. But remember it anyway, just because I asked you to, all right? But you should remember that name because there's a good chance I'll forget it, the way my mind works these days. All right, so welcome to Ask or Tell Me Anything. Happy to have you here, 888-720-9677. The name, I think, adequately describes the concept of these episodes. You may call up and ask or tell me anything. 888-720-WNPR. Let's begin. You know what I said before the show? I said it's not going to be about No King's Day, and it's not going to be about the UConn game. It's going to be about other stuff, and I am not disappointed. Here's Linda from Simsbury. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Colin. So that was an exciting game finish. That's true, and no Kings, yay. But here's my question. You're a bit of a radio guy, so I thought you might have the answer. When I was a kid, my father listened to a couple that I think broadcast out of Kent, Connecticut. We lived on Staten Island. And a couple days a week, there was this couple on the radio named Fitzgeralds, I think.
Yep, you are correct. So here's the story. The Fitzgeralds, Pegeen Fitzgerald is the one that I knew, and I think she survived her. I could be wrong about this. My recollection is she survived her husband by quite a few years, and was. We'll go back to what they were famous for. But the thing that I knew her for, and I was more as a newspaper columnist, was that she started. I think maybe somebody will know how big. She started a pretty enormous cat sanctuary in, I think, Canaan, Connecticut. It was called The Last Post, and what you could do is you could put something in your will, just essentially willing your cat to the last post, and the last post would take your cat. I think it was last scratching post or something. But so, that was sort of a remarkable thing, and that was sort of the way her truth went marching on when she wasn't on the radio anymore. She and her husband, whose first name I do not recall, but they had a show, I think maybe on WOR. They had a New York City show. And a lot of times it took place from, and what had happened was they were both broadcasters. I think they had sort of separate shows, and she got the idea that they should just have a conversation, like a breakfast conversation from their house or from their apartment in New York City. And then, they had a place on Hay Island, I think, and then a place at Kent where they also did it from. But they sort of invented, I think, a format which, oddly enough, might have died out, but is sort of coming back in the form of sort of YouTubers and podcasters and stuff like that. The idea of a show from your house, and a show from they didn't go to a studio, did the show right there from their house. And there was a kind of, I never heard the show, but my understanding was there was a feeling like the kind of stuff that you might talk to your mate at the breakfast table about. They try to kind of recreate that style of conversation. So in a way, it's a type of radio that has gone the way of the dodo. On the other hand, if you sort of think what's happening in digital media where anything is possible, the idea doesn't even seem particularly radical that, a couple would be talking, at their breakfast table. It would be a show. There's probably some version of that that has 6 million followers on YouTube right now. Anyway, is that any help?
Yeah, I only knew them from Kent, Connecticut. I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And at Kent, Connecticut, because of the way they talked to each other and about things, was this little magical, mystical place. And I do remember specifically some wheat germ product that sponsored them.
Well, if you can get a really good wheat germ sponsor, your fortune is essentially secured. Well, Linda, thank you so much for calling up from Simsbury about this. It is lovely talking to you. And we're just going to keep going here. By the way, the number, once again, 888-720-9677. You cannot will your cat to me. In fact, I would say if you're going to will your cat to anybody here, will your cat to Kyone Wolf. She'll take better care of it than I probably would. And anyway, why are we... will your cat to me? You'll probably outlive me anyway. All right. So, who's the biggest cat person at the station? I don't really know. Maybe Cat Shen. I mean, just get the name for it. All right. Here we go. We're going to talk to Dean in Simsbury. Hi, Dean.
Hey, Colin. I'm really fascinated about the use of the phrase, let's go. I mean, between March Madness, this is a little UConn reference. You hear the athletes, you hear the fans screaming, let's go. I see it on game shows. I hear people at weddings and graduations. And I remember when I was younger, people would say absolutely when they agreed with you. And then there was 100%. You still hear them now and then. And if they really agreed with you, it would be 1,000%. And maybe I'm just becoming an old curmudgeon, yelling for people to get off my lawn. But is this a sign of our inability to have a command of the English language where we're able to describe really our feelings? And is this a phase where there'll be a new let's go? Because when I was growing up, when I heard let's go, it was my mom telling me to get up to, catch a school bus, or my dad to, get in the car because let's go, we're going to grandma's. Or maybe I'm just overthinking this, but I was, when I was, everything was cool. Cool is still out there, but I don't know. Am I overthinking this?
Dean, first of all, I want to assure you that you are not an old curmudgeon telling kids to get off your lawn. You're an old curmudgeon shaking your fist at clouds. And I think it's important to make that distinction. I think you might be overthinking it a little bit. I mean, it's just sort of an all-purpose catchphrase. What I associate it with, we used to have this theme song, right when our show first launched 17 years ago. We had a theme song, and it was by Prince. And there is a moment where in that song where he just yells to his band, "Let's go," and I actually sort of think it's a great moment, kind of an uplifting moment. If you're saying "Let's go" is overused, you might have a case there. You certainly are going to have no trouble winning the argument that people, in general, use language less inventively these days. But I mean, on the other hand, they use language very inventively. We just don't necessarily always understand how they're doing it. That's why one of the things you have to do, I really recommend that everybody, all of us in the kind of old man shaking their fist at clouds generation, have a Gen Z interpreter. Have at least one person who's a Gen Z interpreter. Now, I have a Gen Z interpreter. Her name is Olivia. She's a college student. We often walk our dogs together. And she explains things to me. She's immersed enough in Gen Z culture so that she knows all the memes and tropes and stuff like that. And she's smart enough and distant enough from it so that she can explain it to a clueless old man like me. And then I use something like that. And Dylan Reyes, our tech producer, will text me or will Slack me saying, "It upsets me that you know about that." But the reason I know about it is because I have a Gen Z interpreter. So I would really recommend that. And I mean, it won't solve all your problems. And you probably will still be bothered by people saying, "Let's go." But if you're going to let that bother you, you're going to be upset more than you really need to be. And Dean, I want you to be happy. I want you to be happy and calm and fulfilled.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate people's enthusiasm. And I guess I'll just leave you, I'll just leave it at 6-7 at this point.
Yeah, 6-7. Let's go. All right. Thanks. I'm serious about that. Those of us, okay, I'm 71. But I don't know what the age cutoff point is or whatever. But at a certain point, you need a Gen Z interpreter. And it probably can't be your grandchildren. It probably needs to be, because your grandchildren may have already given up on you. But if you can find somebody, and you need an Olivia, you need somebody who understands all that stuff, but also can explain it to somebody who doesn't understand it. And that's not everybody, I guarantee you. All right. So there's like a whole other set of conversations that are going on here right now that they're internally that I won't share with you. Here's Rob in Roxbury. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Colin. How are you doing?
Just fine.
I am enjoying the wonderful weather here in an early spring day, cutting firewood for my place here in Roxbury. And I had a great time at the No Kings rally here in Roxbury. We had over 80 people show up. Now, Roxbury has more cows than people. Yeah,
that's right.
So I think we're doing pretty good.
The other 10 people stayed away. You have to find out why.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, talking to some of the folks there, I was just thinking about it. I said, there isn't anything that we want. There's a whole lot of stuff we don't want. And people, I said, look, what do we want? And as far as I can tell, they want truth, justice, and the American way, but Superman's an illegal alien, so I don't know what we're going to do. We need to find out what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's both fair and unfair, and I'd be interested in hearing other people react to it, too. The number 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. We go back to Ben Franklin, who supposedly said, this may be apocryphal, but supposedly after the drafting of the Constitution in Philadelphia, was done behind closed doors, and he walked out into the street, and a woman asked, "What have you done? What have you come up with?" And he supposedly said, "A republic, if you can keep it." And I think that's very much still the spirit of the No Kings rallies. We want what is supposed to be our system of government, which is a republic, if you can keep it. And that means that, for example, you don't defy court orders. If a judge says, no, that plane cannot transport people, some of whom appear to be either here legally or actual citizens or following that plane cannot go to a prison in El Salvador, and you do it anyway, which is very much the tone that has been set from the outset of Trump's second term. We don't have the republic anymore. We have a republic we have a country that is essentially drifting towards monarchy, autocracy. We've got a judicial system which at the top seems unwilling, although increasingly a little bit more willing to defy Trump. We have a Congress that is at his beck and call. And it just doesn't really seem like there is that idea anymore that a chief executive is responsive to the voters. And so I think, you've got a good point, and maybe people should be able to rattle off 5 things they want. And I actually did that in response to somebody on social media this weekend. But a republic, I mean, that's an okay answer. Somebody who's willing to follow the law, somebody who isn't, using the office to personally enrich himself through crypto schemes and stuff like that. That'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm for it. Let's bring back the republic. I think it's a good idea.
Think about that sounds. Let's bring back the republic. We're acknowledging that it's just a balloon flying up into the sky. Rob, that worries me. All right, have a beautiful day in Roxbury. And I don't know what this is, but I will take it. Here's James, who is in a car somewhere. Points unknown.
Hey, what's going on?
I have no idea.
I'm in Canterbury, just doing my thing. But no, I wanted to talk about amateur radio and how there's been some de-expeditions to some uninhabited islands that no one's really talked about much.
Say more.
Yeah, so for instance, right now there's a bunch of amateur radio operators that are off the coast of Nova Scotia at a place called Sable Island doing essentially they're on the radio on shortwave. And just recently, not too long ago, there was a group that wrapped up a trip down to a place called Bouvet Island, which is about halfway between Cape Town, South Africa, and Antarctica. And I didn't really, other than the fact that I'm in the hobby, no one really talked about it.
And I mean, in a way, this seems to me very throwbacky. Just in the sense that I get pirate radio, but these days the digital transmission allows you to do essentially anything. So I'm going to. I mean, maybe is it just why are they doing something like that? Why are they subjecting themselves to the rigors of offshore pirate radio? Is it just the romance and the kind of swashbuckling quality to it?
Well, it's not pirate radio. These are actually FCC licensed individuals that are doing it. So it's all legal through different entities, whether it's state, like U.S. based or international, and they're doing it for the love of the game because they want to get out and get to these places that either haven't been activated before or are very rare and hard to get to.
That's kind of cool. I like that. I mean, I like the spirit of that, and I like the for the love of the game too. That's very cool. I will endeavor to learn more about that. Is there anything that you would suggest that I do as a first step towards learning more about what you already know?
Yeah, I would say, believe it or not, Connecticut is the home of the Amateur Radio Relay League in Newington, Connecticut.
I do know that. I do know I know that Newington building quite well. Yeah.
But other than that, there's some great websites that talk about different groups that are going to different locations. I know, for instance, there's a group wrapping up in Bangladesh, another group that's wrapping up in Macau. Sable Island ends this week. There's different websites you can look up what they're called de-expeditions and find out, who's where and what they're doing. That's
very cool. Well, look, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, I love learning about something kind of new. So that's very cool. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your safe driving as well, James. So what should we do? We take one more call, and then we'll go to a break. And it's going to be, this is a bugaboo of mine, actually. This is Jane in Waterbury. Hi, Jane.
Hi. I'm going to talk about the Cartoon Caption Contest in the New Yorker for this week.
I hate that whole thing, but anyway, continue.
Okay. There's a huge blank canvas, and two bunnies are painting, not Playboy bunnies, Easter bunnies.
Bunny bunnies.
And
That's the scientific name for them. They're called bunny bunnies. Okay, what's your caption?
Cartoon.
Yeah.
And there'd be a huge globe, and it's the equatorial highway, I call it, and it has a tropic of Cancer and the tropic of Capricorn. And going along the equatorial highway, it's west to east, starting below the United States, because the United States.
Wait a minute, is this a cartoon caption, or is this a novella? What is this? What are you talking about?
They've got there's a huge rocket, and riding the rocket is DJ Trump, and he's wearing the American cowboy outfit, cowboy hat, holster, NRA holster, probably open carry, cowboy boots, and as he goes along, he's dropping bombs, starting with the Caribbean and then Nigeria, etc., all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And
okay, we need to get to the punchline here. What's the punchline?
Say that again?
We need to get to the punchline.
Okay, the punchline is, and then he's looking back at the United States where there is Savannah Guthrie.
Yeah.
And think about the end of the New Hampshire primary.
This is so complicated.
Nikki Haley.
You need like a sabbatical to get ready to understand this.
The caption is kill, kill, kill. I'm glad they're dead. They're all apes. She can't steal my spotlight. People die.
Okay, you're not going to win, okay?
I know I'm not going to win, but
I just
thought it might be interesting in what's going on today.
All right. I have to say one thing about all this. I don't like this. I've never liked this New Yorker caption contest. My feeling is do your jobs. You draw a cartoon and then write the caption. Don't draw a cartoon and then say, okay, you figure it out. All of you can send in ideas for this. That isn't the way the New Yorker used to work. And now I sound like Rob or whoever with the Let's Go guy, but Rob the Let's Go guy. But just do the cartoons.
But isn't that kind of similar to what the new cartoon caption is, a way of getting readers to feel they have a part of the magazine and to continue subscribing? Isn't that similar to what you're doing, and that you're opening it up so that listeners feel they're a part of the show, a part of Connecticut NPR.
Oh no, you might be catching me in a contradiction. No, I mean, so here's the thing. Call-in radio is a very well understood genre. I did for 16 years a show where many days we had no guests for 3 hours, or we'd have maybe one or two guests, but mostly people would call in and talk about stuff, and it's understood to be a participatory thing. The New Yorker, meanwhile, has a legendary, decades-long status as the place you go to look at the work of the finest cartoonists in America. And what have they done? They've made it lazy. And I say, for shame, get off my lawn. I hate you, clouds. I have to take a break, Jane. Good luck with the caption. You're not going to win, though. I say that with love and great acceptance, but you will not win. All right, let's take a little break, and we will come back.
Right by the light, by the window. Detrimental to my vision. Without my glasses and you're far away with no precision. I doubt that if I left this room it will be any different. Not really, I really doubt it. Detrimental to my vision. Without my glasses and you're far away with no precision. I doubt that if I leave this room it will be any different. Not really, I really doubt it.
Better get out of the way. Gonna figure out what I want to say. I've been a long time coming, making my way through the weeds, branches tugging the sleeves. I've been a long time gone. No more crying. I'm not gonna put up a fight. When I get there, I'll be swimming in the ancient light. Dry leaves under my shoes. I got nothing to lose, and now the clouds roll in.
That is I'm With Her. I saw them last night at the Academy of Music in Northampton. And they were doing what they call one of their one mic shows. So these are three elite musicians. Sarah Watkins, who's a spectacular vocalist, but a really, really spectacular fiddler. And Sarah Jarosz, also great vocalist and songwriter, and very, very adept finger-picking guitarist. And everything in banjo and mandolin and everything. And then Aoife O'Donovan, a singer and songwriter whose work just has been blowing my mind for years. And anyway, they somehow or other they share one multi-directional mic, which I suppose people have been doing for decades and decades and decades. Although I think it's a little bit more interesting when one of you plays the fiddle. Like I don't know why there hasn't been a fairly serious eye injury. They all have to kind of lean in together and sing and play at the same time. All right, so anyway, that's a little thought of mine. Let's go. Oh, I said let's go. Let's go back to the phones here, and let's just see who's got what to talk about. We'll start with Ryan in East Hartford. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Colin. How you doing?
Just fine.
Oh, great. I wanted to talk about Sherry.
My mail carrier. I'm a former mail carrier.
Yes. Yes, sir.
We'll talk away. Go ahead.
Sherry is my best friend's mom, and I just want to point out that she is great, and I love her, and she's just as good in person as she is as your mail carrier.
Yes. I mean, I consider her mail carrying to be in person, but I know what you're saying, too. I know exactly what you're saying. No, I just want to say in general that I've become very interested. I mean, first of all, Sherry, just to sort of back up, Sherry was our mail carrier for many years. Her last day was treated as both a massive celebration and a day of mourning for all of the neighborhoods she served. I mean, her route took her like 3 extra hours at least, because people like me were sitting in their driveways with presents and stuff that had been baked for her and stuff. And then there was this massive greeting of her at the end of one cul-de-sac. It made the local news. And then it was on NBC Nightly News over the past week, the weekend before last. So it just, I mean, it's been an incredible thing. But I think, and she's a very, very special person, and we just all love and adore her.
There's nothing less. She's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally 100% agree. But I'm also very interested. I think I've talked about this before on the show, but I'm very interested in, particularly at a time like this where the nation seems to be divided and people just have kind of lousy feelings about each other. You know, there are these people who are the connective tissue of life. You know, and sometimes it's a lot of mail carriers play that role. Sometimes it's a crossing guard who just knows how to talk to the parents and kids and maybe even knows how to flash a smile or a wave at a driver who's coming through. It's the person at the counter at the local diner, you know, or it's those 3 guys who show up at the diner every single day and talk about the same stuff over and over again, but that we underestimate those people. We undervalue them. They're not necessarily famous or special. They just do their jobs or they play their roles in kind of an exciting way. And they are desperately needed right now. I mean, we need an army of Sherrys.
Those people, I try not to undervalue them. I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
But yeah, everybody who's the backbone of the service industry is.
Yeah, people who do that kind of job and do it well and bring smiles to people's faces. The example I often give, there was a guy, there used to be a toll booth on the Putnam Bridge, which connects Glastonbury to Wethersfield. And there was a guy named Mr. Foster. People always called him Mr. Foster. He was this very distinguished, older black gentleman. And if Mr. Foster was working, even if there was another lane open that had fewer cars in it, people would wait. I don't even know how they knew, but they would wait in Mr. Foster's lane. And if you wanted to see Mr. Foster, you knew that you should pull in behind the 8 cars waiting to go through the booth and not take the empty lane, because it must mean that Mr. Foster was in. And it wasn't anything, wasn't the content of what he said. Somehow it was the way he smiled at you and the tone of his voice when he spoke to you. And you just got on the other side of that booth 25 cents poorer, but a lot happier. And people who do that, I mean, you can't even really put a value on what they do. But it's a big value. Anyway, we're going to move on here. We're going to talk to Jim from New Haven. Hi, Jim. Well,
hello.
Here you are. Hi, Jim.
Oh, it's Tim.
Oh, it's Tim. All right. Sorry about that.
So sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had heard about any of this culvert work that's been happening across the state. It seems like we're pouring millions of dollars into like upgrading infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm not really up to date on culverts. You know, there's WSHU has a show called Let's Go Culverts, and I think it's at 8 p.m. on Tuesday nights. They really cover culverts extremely well. But I'm a little bit distrustful of culverts, and I'll tell you why. Because, in fact, if you look around, like I know Hartford best. So Hartford, I don't know if this counts as a culvert exactly, but they put the Park River underground. You know, they made like a really big culvert. And, you know, whenever that happens, I mean, we have like a lost river here that could have been, you know, I know that rivers flood and stuff like that, but you can do flood control. I feel like we haven't really used our water features to great advantage. But that may not be specific to the kind of culvert stuff that you're thinking and talking about. So give me just a little bit more on this, because we don't cover culverts the way we should.
I'm thinking more about amphibian crossings, especially with April coming up here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you want the turtles to get across and stuff. So aren't the culverts good in terms of helping the turtles and frogs to get across?
They definitely are. What I was worried about is like lack of federal funding. If you had any insight about that, about how we've sort of slashed our federal infrastructure bills.
Yeah, well, look, like so many things went by the wayside. It's when the guy was talking before about what do we want? You know, what do we if we're having the guy from Roxbury. I mean, so much got lost in this sort of really kind of wanton cutting. And I haven't really given any thought to culverts, but yeah, I mean, I'm with you. But really, the show you want to listen to, it's on WSHU. It's called Let's Go Culverts, and they really know their stuff there. So I don't want to try to substitute my expertise for theirs. All right, let's go to Peter. Peter in Wallingford. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Colin. Yeah, how does Trump convince anyone to go to war? I mean, that he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize by going to war with Iran and leave a legacy of a peacemaker. I just don't get it. And leave all that trillions of dollars extra in debt to all future young Americans. It's just insane.
Yeah, well, first of all, he doesn't have any trouble convincing people that he wants to win the Nobel Prize. We all get that. We're all convinced that he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. But his latest rant about this, he has this whole thing, and he says, I stopped 8 different wars, and they were going on. One was going on for 36 years, and one had been going on for 31 years, and another one 25 and 28. He's just rattling off these numbers. He's not saying which wars he's talking about. He's just rattling off numbers. And he goes, and then 1 or 2 of them hadn't started yet. Well, how do you stop a war if it hasn't started? The truth is, he's never going to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm very unconfident now of my ability to predict things because, in fact, so many unpredictable things have happened, particularly over the last 14 months or so. But I'm very comfortable saying he will never win a Nobel Peace Prize. And I mean, if anything, if they could send him a negative prize, like an antimatter prize that would suck up any other awards that he has won that in its vicinity and destroy them and send them into a tesseract to another portion of the universe, that's what they would do. That's what the Nobel Committee would do. They would send him an anti-prize that would eat all of his other prizes and poop them out in a distant galaxy. And that's not fair to the distant galaxy. They're trying to keep things clean. They've installed culverts. They're just trying to live their lives. So don't do that, people of Norway. People of Norway who are on that particular prize committee, because that's been another problem for Trump. He doesn't know who gives out the prize. He thinks the Prime Minister of Norway gives it out. That is not the case. All right, we're going to keep going here. We're at the point in the show where people are calling up about previous calls, and that's a good point. And so here we go with Mike from Woodbury. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Colin. Yeah. So Peggy Fitzgerald, it was Ed and Peggy Fitzgerald.
Yep.
And because my parents were avid radio listeners, and I remember when I was very, very young, I mean, single digits young, in the morning, they would listen to the radio, and during breakfast, and Ed and Peggy, and the other guy I remember is Big Wilson. Do you remember him? He was on WNBC. He was a disc jockey, and then there was a guy that I don't know if you'll have any idea who this was, but he was on a local radio. I think he was a Bridgeport radio station, and he would sing and play the ukulele and make up ridiculous songs about Connecticut. For example, to the tune of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." It was "Somewhere Over the Merritt Parkway." Past Pepperidge Farm, and it was hilarious. But do you remember that? Do you know who that is?
Sounds a little bit like something that I would do, but I did not actually do that. Did he also enter New York cartoon caption contests?
I've tried to do that, but many times, and I've come up completely empty.
They don't care. They don't care about you. That's the thing you have to understand, Mike. They could not possibly care less about the people who are entering this contest. It's just like one cartoonist they don't have to pay that week.
Right.
That's how it looks to David Remnick, and I love David Remnick. I couldn't admire him more. But he's just thinking, okay, so we're not going to have to, we won't have to pay Roz Chast this week.
Okay. Can I say one other thing unrelated? The ending of that UConn game was one for the ages.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Have you ever seen anything like that before? I mean,
well, yeah, people compare it to the Tate George shot, and they compare it to the Christian Laettner shot. And it's going to be in that group of things where people will know what you're talking about right away when you start talking about it, assuming that, that people care and know about basketball. But thanks for your call, Mike. As usual, outstanding work. Okay. This is going to be a minefield, I can tell you right now. But let's do it. We love a minefield. And then we're going to go to break. But when we come back from break, we will have open phone lines. And you can call 888-720-9677 and be first in line. 888-720-WNPR. But we're not going to a break yet. We're going to take a call from Todd in Greenport. Hi, Todd.
Oh, hi, Colin.
Hi.
You were talking about Sarah Watkins earlier, and I know she's played a lot on Prairie Home Companion and, with Garrison Keillor just by herself and him and stuff. I was just wondering what your opinions are about Garrison Keillor, like as far as, I know he's like, an NPR legend and everything, but if you've gone to see him at all recently, I went to see him in Tanglewood this past summer, and if you, what you think about him as a radio personality and his sort of literary output.
First of all, it's funny because we're on the drive back from Northampton last night. We started talking about, there were three of us in the car, and we started talking about Garrison Keillor. I mean, I think if you go back to the earliest stirrings of Prairie Home Companion, this was a remarkable thing for public radio. It was a show that was on Saturday nights that people actually made a point of listening to. People might even decide not to go out on Saturday nights so they could stay home and listen to Prairie Home Companion. I mean, it is an interesting kind of cousin to some of the radio conversations we've had today. Radio used to be a thing that you could only hear at a certain time, and if it was important to you, you had to make a plan for it. So what he did was to combine these remarkable monologues, and I don't take anything away from him about that, with an interestingly a hand-picked group of musicians. For a long time, he had some people kind of on staff there. I had a singer named Prudence Johnson who used to just blow my mind. She could sing a bluegrass tune, but she could also belt out a jazz standard. And I think some of the stuff that he did with music was really interesting. I will say that as time went on, and this is where I'm going to acknowledge in advance that I'm on thin ice, and then I'm going to give you an example of how thin that ice really is. But I started to think that his insistence, like he'd have like Renee Fleming on, and then he'd sing a little duet with her in his, high school glee club baritone. And to me, that got to be a little bit much. And I thought that, if you're going to have, Renee Fleming, just let her sing, okay? Now, I realize that I'm on thin ice because of two things. One of them is that I've made this point before, and my high school friend David said to me recently, I notice you're singing more on your show these days, and you used to complain about Garrison Keillor, and I said, okay, so you got me. And the other thing that happened was after our holiday show, I was talking to Cynthia Wolcott from formerly of In Trine, but one of the singers that we've worked with a lot. And I said, I just always feel kind of bad because you guys are professional singers and your voices are in shape and you sound good and, you really know what you're doing and like Atlas de Champlain and people like that. And then here I am singing with I sing in public twice a year at most and don't do a lot of work and I never sound that good. And Cynthia said, yeah, but you're kind of like a Garrison Keillor kind of thing. And I thought, oh, just kill me now. Shoot me now. So that's where I'm at, Todd. But I think, Keillor, he had a great run. I think he's an example of somebody who stayed too long. And then he kind of got semi-canceled a little bit after that too. But I mean, he got canceled in a number of different ways. But I think he stayed a little bit too long. And you know what? They had a really hard time replacing that. They brought in, this is what we were talking about last night. When Chris Thile came in and he kind of was supposed to take over the Prairie Home Companion franchise, and Chris Thile is a monster talent, but he didn't really know how to host a show like that one. And he would come in and he would try to do kind of wry humor in the Keillor mode. And it just didn't really work that well. And I kind of gave up on the show. And then during COVID, I came back to it and I realized, okay, he had done the smart thing. He turned it into just a very, very elite music show with just terrific musicians on and terrific musical decisions. I remember at one point Sarah Jarosz, who was now with I'm with her, she and his mostly kind of Punch Brothers-y kind of bluegrass band covered Billie Eilish's Bad Guy and did just a spectacular job with it. And so what he realized is he couldn't do the Keillor thing. Keillor's thing is a thing that he really kind of perfected for himself, and it wasn't transferable. Thiele had to make it into his own kind of music show. And by that time, Minnesota Public Radio had run out of money or something like that. So that's my long-winded answer to your question. And but I mean, look, let's give Keillor his due. Those monologues on A Great Night, they were like unlike anything I've ever heard, and they went all kinds of really fascinating places. And he didn't exactly seem to have anything resembling a script to do them. And then every once in a while, he would come up with some idea where he would read a couple of really good poems by somebody else while Leo Kottke played guitar behind him or something. And I think that's really cool. That's so great. So I give him a lot of credit. But he stayed too long. Thank the Lord I haven't done that. I haven't like hung around until I got really old and irrelevant. Oh, I thank God that I had the sense to avoid that fate. All right. I'm really depressed now. Let's take a break. We'll talk when I come back.
Don't everybody cry. I'll come running whenever you need me. Whenever you need me. I traded my western sky for a pair of shaky eyes. Gotta be some kind of reason. Crusaded children gone by. Don't everybody cry. I'll come running whenever you need me. I'll come running whenever you need me.
Tell me a tale that always was. Sing me a song that I'll always hear. Tell me a story that I can read. Tell me a story that I believe. Paint me a picture that I can see. Give me a touch that I can feel. Turn me around so I can be everything I was meant to be. Lord, I need loving. Lord, I need good, good loving. Lord, I need loving. Lord, I need good, good loving.
And that was one of the Maestro's picks. Dylan Ray's our technical producer, picked out that song. And we thank him for his role on the show today. We thank Robin Doyen Aiken, our delightful and wonderful and warm-hearted boss, who's actually screening calls today and giving people a pleasant experience before they talk to me and have a less pleasant experience. And Lily Testing Quality Entertainment Productions has made this show today possible, or even probable. So thanks for all of that. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to say, except that let me just say this. If you're listening on Monday, tomorrow's show, which will occur on Tuesday, are you following me? Will be about kings, because we just went through our third major No Kings rally. So we're going to kind of look at kings. What other countries still have kings? How do monarchies work these days? There'll be other king-related. Just listen, just tune in, all right? Take my word for it. Trust me. All right. And we're also going to do the show with Christian. I don't have that in front of me right now, and I don't even have my tablet turned on. But we are going to be at Yale Divinity School on, I'm going to go over to say April 6th. And we're going to be having a conversation with Christian Wyman, whose approach to theology and his linkage between the inexplicable nature of human consciousness and the nature of God has really intrigued me. So, and it's free, but you have to reserve a ticket. Go to WNPR.org or ctpublic.org/Colin We've come to the end of my consciousness right now, actually, but we have 7 more minutes to go on the air. And we will do that. We will get you a ticket or something. Okay, so these are all good things. Interesting calls here. Here's Don. Hi, Don. You're on the air.
Thanks, Colin. Hi. I'm calling just to sort of undo the damage done by your previous caller to the New Yorker Cartoon Caption Contest.
I thought I did all the damage to it, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, it's still smoking. So
Okay.
Everybody knows there's a show on TV called The Bear, and it was really, a couple of years ago it came out. It was so popular. Everybody was watching The Bear. Everybody just couldn't get enough of The Bear. But nobody could quite put their finger on what it was about it. It wasn't, the acting was okay, but it was just something. So I think it was the Times that said, well, that's a good thing for our arts and letters guy to write about. Why don't you do a column that sort of captures what The Bear was about? So they drafted somebody to do that, and this person came up with 750 words, which didn't really help at all, and he was struggling with it, and finally ended up saying, what it is about the bear is best captured by a New Yorker cartoon, and the cartoon appeared at the end of this person's piece in the Times, and the cartoon was a man and a woman totally naked on a bed that was totally disheveled and had obviously been the scene of a very successful sexual encounter. And one of these people says to the other, honey, that was just so great, but I got to ask you one thing. What was all that Yes Chef stuff?
Yes, chef stuff. Okay. Well, that's a great point, because we're going to go from, that's a good cartoon. But we're going to go from there to a discussion of a show that ridiculed New Yorker cartoons and said they weren't funny, which would be Seinfeld. Here's Paul from New Fairfield to talk about it.
Yeah. Hi. I was thinking about how the decline in propriety was encouraged by the Seinfeld show. Everybody on there did things that are just not normal, things that people think about. So what's the connection do you make to the way we are today?
Yeah, I think that's a big albatross to hang around Seinfeld's neck. And I think for the most part, people had some kind of a ironic detachment from. Nobody thought, oh, George Costanza is such a noble and great guy. Let's be more like him. And I think, yes, there were times when the comedy came from the violation of societal norms. I remember in particular a discussion that the 4 of them had in a car about whether to park in a handicap spot. And I think it was Kramer who was saying, no, they want us to do that. They want to be treated like everybody else. That was his rationale for able-bodied people parking in a handicap parking spot. But I think we were meant to think, okay, that's funny that they are so warped and self-absorbed that they think that's okay to do. I agree that we have come to a state of declining mores, but I'm not sure how much of it I want to blame George Costanza and Kramer and Elaine for. And they were very tough on the New Yorker cartoons in that one episode. All right, we have to stop right now. I would say, do something nice for yourself today, and then do something nice for a culvert. Or just pick up a turtle and make it walk or carry it across the road. Even if it doesn't want to go across the road. You know what's better for the turtle than the turtle does. It's a turtle.
If someone will insult me, then I must block it and delete it. I must try to like me, must try to find myself. She likes the way she looks tonight. She'll try somehow to like the way she looks tonight. Though it isn't simple as it sounds, but when self-love lets you down, you must never sigh and fret. Get a grip, that's what I said. You must change the way you talk to yourself. It's only you that can do it. Only me that can try to love the way I look tonight.
Beautiful. I think we got it, guys. Right, everyone have a cup of tea now.